Hello, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us today. My name is Kerrigan Turner. I am the Outreach Associate for the Activate Recruitment Team. My job with the Activate Recruitment Team is to really help you all, potential applicants or candidates interested in the Activate Fellowship, to really support you on your journey as you apply for the fellowship. Today, we are here to talk to three of our 188 Activate Fellows about their journey into Activate as women founders. But we're really here to spark a conversation and discussion just about female leadership. So with that being said, I will introduce our panelists. First, we have Kara Beasley, who is the CEO of Align Carbon and part of our 2019 cohort. She is an expert in carbon materials, particularly single-walled carbon material, or carbon nanotube growth, excuse me. As a process engineer at Applied Materials, she spent 4 years learning about the semiconductor industry and process tool development, while also continuing her work on new materials. She holds a PhD in physical chemistry from Stanford University and a BS in biochemistry from the University of California at Santa Barbara. We also have Ms. Ashley Beckwith, who is the CEO of Foray Bioscience and is a part of our 2022 cohort. She is, again, the founder and CEO, where she is reimagining the production of tree source goods and materials. She holds a PhD as well as a master's degree in mechanical engineering from MIT, and her research and industry experience spans bioengineering, biomaterials, product design, and advanced manufacturing. And then finally, we have Ms. Yajing Zhao, who is the CEO of Mesophase and a part of our cohort 2022. She is the founder and CEO as well, in which her company seeks to enhance energy efficiency via surface innovations. She also holds a PhD in mechanical engineering from MIT and is passionate about clean energy. She has spent the last 2 years of research in power plant thermoeconomic analysis and 6 years of research in condensation heat transfer. She was also an advocate for women empowerment. She is also an advocate for women's empowerment and has served as the executive co-chair of the MIT Mechanical Engineering Graduate Association of Women. And thank you for the reintroduction, Kara. I see that you are. It's not Align Carbon anymore. It's nanocarbon creation. So thank you for that. And with that being said, we will go on ahead and get started. So the way we're going to do this discussion is we'll just ask a couple of questions. We're going to take about the next 40 minutes or so, just really going into the discussion in the panel, and then we'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the discussion for some Q&A from potential applicants. If you guys have any, feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A or the chat as well. So we will not go in any particular order. Whoever wants to answer the first question, have at it. But my first question is, what sparked you to enter in the science or engineering field? Ashley, I see you shaking your head. You want to take a stab at it first?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to get the ball rolling. Yeah, I think growing up, I was interested in solving problems, and I always enjoyed the sort of logic and structure behind, STEM type classes. But I also liked that I could translate that knowledge to have real practical applications. And so I think that's how I eventually found my way to mechanical engineering. Although I started out in the biomedical sciences space, I was interested in solving problems in the medical field. But ultimately found that, engineering rather than scientific research was my real passion. I like building solutions and implementing those solutions. So that's kind of how I gravitated to the field.
Perfect, thank you. And we always love a good pivot here at Activate. So happy to hear that.
So for me, it was kind of similar in that growing up, I had two passions. I had science, and particularly chemistry, and horses. And horses make a much better hobby than science does, and science makes a much better career than horses do. So That is what I did. I started more microbiology than biochemistry, and now hardcore nanomaterials and physical chemistry is where I'm happy playing. So,
All right. And were you all inspired or mentored by any women who have founded science-based startups in the past, or may possibly a teacher who inspired you? And if so, who were they and what do they mean to you?
I can jump into this question. So my PhD advisor is a great example of female in STEAM. So I first got to know her through an MIT newsletter highlighting her research in the energy space. And that really inspired me to pursue grad school with her. And throughout my grad school, she's just a role model of how a female can manage to balance work and life. She has a very crazy schedule, but she managed to balance all of that. And also through my PhD group, there are also examples of female entrepreneurs coming out of my lab. For example, Elise, she is actually another Activate Fellow. So she's exactly the example I was pursuing after when I was getting out of grad school.
No, it sounds like you had a good group of women to look up to, which is great to hear. Anyone else have anything to add?
I would just say, I didn't really know any women entrepreneurs when I was kind of starting out down this branch of my professional path. But along the way, I've met a lot of really fantastic and supportive individuals, some of them here, but also outside of the Activate community, and a lot of like women and men who are sort of allies to the experience of building a company as a woman, and have been incredibly supportive of my journey and champions of what we are doing. So I've just been inspired by those interactions that I've had, and that's made me very optimistic about my personal journey.
Good, good. And if I may ask, what brought you all to apply to Activate? Did you hear about it from a friend? Did you just, stumble across it on the internet, or maybe a fellowship or, grant website? How did you discover it?
I'll jump in on that one. I found it on the Cyclotron Road website. This was early before it was Activate. It was Cyclotron Road. And I actually came up to one of the open house happy hours and met a bunch of the current cohort, a couple other applicants, and Tom Boosie, who was fantastic and ended up being my managing director. But I distinctly remember the conversations with him. Have always been, or have been, passionate about carbon nanotubes for a long time. And Tom's comment was, never are we going to admit a carbon nanotube company, at least not on my watch. So I have been having lots of fun with Tom and reminding him that not only does he have one, he has another one from cohort 2023. So fortunately, he's good about being wrong. But Activate has been a fantastic experience, and incredibly supportive as a community. So I'm very glad that I wandered up and took a chance.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, I think in my experience, Activate was recommended to me by a former Activate fellow, and also I sort of heard buzz about it through the sort of accelerator networks and investors that I met through those programs. And yeah, I was amazed that this type of program existed, and it was for me a really a helpful resource in this transition from the academic sphere to the entrepreneurial sphere, and then having these external supporters and mentors who aren't directly involved in the funding of my company, that can provide sort of unbiased perspective and be a resource when I need to talk through difficult things. So yeah, it's been a great resource, but word of mouth in my experience. Yeah.
All righty. And since because you all for Ashley and Yajing, you all are in your second year of the fellowship, but Cara is now an Activate alumni. But since you all started your entrepreneurial journeys, what has been your biggest obstacle to date?
I think to me, I would call it rather a lesson learned is that starting off, I have a lot of hypotheses about how this cool technology can be applied to the industry and how much impact I can have. But then realizing that there is a huge gap between academia and the real application in industry that actually cause some misunderstanding that I had for the tech to market. So I would say the lessons I learned is really start to talk to the real end users and learn what the major pain points are for them, and to understand your true value prop. That's kind of obstacle or a lesson.
Wait, I think we're having some technical difficulties. If anyone wants to jump in
Sure.
on her behalf.
Oh, don't know what thought she was going to finish.
Oh,
Oh,
wait,
you're
I
back.
think she's back. Do you want to finish your thought?
Sorry, was it my end?
I think so, but you're all good to go now if you want to finish your thought.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, I feel like the obstacle was to find the right application for the tech. There is some gap between what you thought and what the real user case could be.
Okay, I think we got it. I think we got it now. Thank you. Thank you for that, Yajin. Car, did you want to jump in?
Sure. Mine has been more on figuring out how I fit in this space, not so much tech. Carbon nanotubes is a hard problem, but it's something that fascinates me. But what I have struggled with is I'm happiest in lab. I am not sure that I actually like the executive role. I'm not sure that that's where I fit. But I also am not the easiest person to manage, nor am I the most tolerant of management. So, how do I fit in this eco space? Do I want to be a founder? That is an ongoing struggle. So now I'm back to a lab in my garage, and it's just me. So if I have a problem with management, it's my problem. But that's an ongoing battle, and Activate has been incredibly supportive with figuring out how do I fit, how do I make this work, how can I bring my tech to market, maybe in a non-traditional fashion. Do I have to be a founder? Do I have to be CEO? If I don't play nicely with others, do I have to play with others? So that's an open question, and I think Activate is uniquely suited as a program to help with this issue, because the success is not make the biggest best company the fastest. It's really figuring out what do you actually want to do, what makes you happiest, and where are you best suited. So in that, I feel very lucky to have found Activate for this, because I don't have any answers yet. I have a long list of things I don't want to do. So we'll see where it goes.
I mean, I think, when you start to cross out things that you don't want to do, I think that still helps you on your journey. So
Absolutely.
it's still a positive for sure. Still a positive for sure. And success in your own way is something I'll add. Success in the fellows way, or in your sense, how you define success is in a sense how Activate defines success for our fellows. So I'm glad that we were able to support you on your niche journey to entrepreneurship, however that might look for you. Ashley, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a common theme among Activate companies is like there's this unique challenge of figuring out how to translate these really unusual but potentially impactful technologies to market when they don't necessarily fit into a predictable box. And so I think we all face this unique challenge of identifying the right product market fit, but also the right sort of business model and development journey, and financing journey. So it's tremendously complex. And I think maybe building off what Kara and Yajing have said, like things that I was surprised to find when I started building the company was like how much more infinitely complex things become. So you sort of are doing this PhD research that's on the cutting edge. Obviously, you're working on innovative ideas, but then suddenly the number of variables just increases, and you have to balance some more like unpredictable variables that don't adhere to the laws of physics, and things get a little bit interesting. So it's an interesting puzzle, but is not something to be taken on lightly, I don't think. And I think, like one thing that I sort of under indexed on when I started was the importance of really intentionally working on sort of the team and team cohesion. So as a founder of a company, team actually ends up taking up a lot of your time as you start to grow. And I think that's something that I wasn't really expecting, and people don't talk about very often, although I think it's kind of universally true. People are complicated. So
that is very true. And building a team can be a make or break in a lot of cases. I think your team, and especially when you're in an early stage startup, these are people who are integral and very important to the success of your company. So I would definitely say that people and culture is very important, very important. But with that being said, could you all describe your leadership style? It seems like we have three women with three very different leadership styles. So could you describe that a little bit more, how you lead others? And as a woman, do you have a unique perspective or approach that you bring to your leadership role, do you think? Yeah.
I'm trying to see if my audio is back. Is it working?
Very good.
Thanks. So let me know if it's not working again. I hope not. So I think negotiation is a skill I wish I can get better again and again. And I even took a negotiation class when I was in grad school. But I feel like maybe because I'm a female, I have a lot of empathy when I'm dealing with people. So I would think a lot on the other people's side, which may make me less decisive. So I'm a solo founder right now, and I don't have a team to lead, but I used to have someone to work with as a team. And so that experience, I know my style would be when it comes to a hard decision that may hurt the other party's feelings, I had a hard time to speak out, and I have to make a very detailed plan before I communicate with the other party, which I feel like is taking too much time, and I'm hoping to get better over time. But once you have done those tough decisions, I feel like you will get better on that over time.
The first time is always the toughest. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say I recognize that challenge in myself, but I also think that empathy can be a great asset when it comes to like building great relationships with your team, and really trying to build a culture that people can enjoy and benefit from and thrive in, because you put so much effort and thought into other people's well-being, where I think I am really making an effort to try to build a company that like people want to be a part of. Not to say that it's always an easy journey, but as far as leadership style, I think that plays into it a lot for me as well. I think I'm less of a person who demands that things get done. But I really want to influence people to bring them along on the journey so that we're building and strategizing together. But I think there's also a balance between or figuring out like when to involve people in the full scope of the journey and when not to involve them in the full scope of the journey, because you know, we all have sort of different priorities and obligations to the company. And as a founder and as a leader of the company, you have a lot of information to filter, a lot of perspectives that you're gaining every day by communicating with, you know, external contacts. And so there's a bit of, you sort of have to trust yourself in some ways in the decision making. So you have to impose some structure, but also engage in your team and get your team to sort of buy in and add to the structure to make it more full and more complete. So that's, I think, how I aspire to lead my company.
So right now I'm solo founder and don't have a team. And I think probably the best way to describe my leadership style is reluctant. I don't want to be in charge. I don't have to make all the decisions. But I'm also heavily involved in 2 volunteer organizations in which I have ended up in a leadership position, basically because there was not a better answer. There was not a better person to it. And so it's not a lack of leadership experience. It's that I would prefer to not be in charge. I can be if I have to be. And so when I am in charge, probably because I have been doing a lot of leadership in volunteer organizations where you don't have, you know, a ton of authority, you have to herd the cats all in one direction. It tends to be a little bit more of a quieter leadership style, a little bit more almost invisible. My goal is to enable people to get what they need done. And if they can make the decisions, I don't have to touch every decision. If you don't know that I'm in charge, I'm doing my job right. And I think this is a trait we see in a lot of women leaders who are not leading in a more traditional, dominant male manner. We have some that are trying to lead more like you see as a traditional dominant CEO. But I think that there are more of us that are happier being a little bit more of an enablers, almost a nurturing type with the empathy and thinking about both sides. And I think that's one thing that Activate does well, is it encourages a variety of different leadership styles. As a fellow, we tend to talk and compare and contrast ideas. There isn't, here is one mold, here is the right way to do it. It is, okay, this is what you're doing. Maybe this might be slightly more effective as a tool to add. But I appreciate that it's not like some of the management books that say, this is, if you are a leader, you are doing X, Y, and Z. And I think that that is very narrow-minded. But I don't have all of this figured out. So it could be that I just am stubbornly determined to not do this the typical way. And it may come back and bite me, we'll see. But that's what I've done so far.
I still love that answer. And I love the fact that all of you still carry empathy and nurturing to help inspire and, like you said, enable other people. I think thinking selflessly to empower your team to do great things while you kind of want to be in the back end. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that that's actually beautiful because, again, it's being, you know, selfless and wanting to help other people get to their successes. And you're just a part on that journey. So I think that that's really beautiful as a leadership style. How have you all built confidence or resiliency over the course of your careers, or since you've been in as a founder or an entrepreneur?
I can start on this one. I think there's an element to it that's just like exposure therapy. So, you know, working in research is hard anyway. You fail a lot, things don't go as expected. You get a lot of bad feedback from your PI, you get criticism on your papers from your reviewers. And I think the important thing is to, yeah, I mean, you can feel what you feel in those moments, but once that feeling passes, really try to look beyond the feeling and sort of understand the information that was being communicated to you, and really try to hear it and implement aspects that, you know, that you think will be beneficial and will improve your methods. And so I think, again, it's just the more exposure you have, the easier it gets to sort of shorten that timeline of initial grief or anxiety, and then coming back down and being able to process and implement the information. So I think one thing I've tried to do is, like, when I feel bad about something, I try to give myself a little bit of space to actually feel that, and then I can move on and process it. I think that's allowed me to build more and more resilience in these situations.
I think for me, I gained confidence over competition. I actually am afraid of being on stage, and I'm afraid of being competed with each other. But looking back, when I was submitting my application to Activate, for example, I didn't expect me to get into the next round. And when I was getting close to graduation, I participated in a few MIT entrepreneurial competitions, and basically I had the material, so I thought I would just try it. And then with the competitions going, I realized that with the mentorship I gained, I actually can succeed in many of these competitions and even win some money to start off my company. And that really builds up my confidence over time. And getting the Activate is really like a marker on me to make me believe I can try further down this road.
I just want to say I love that, and the fact that even though you felt afraid in those situations, you kept like putting yourself out there. And I think that's so important, just to be able to continue to make yourself uncomfortable, because it's those uncomfortable situations that allow us to grow. Not all uncomfortable situations, but you know, those specific ones that challenge our limits. Yeah,
Definitely. I think for me, it's my support network. Even growing up, having friends and family. And one of the nice things about horses is they love you as long as you feed them. They're always happy to see you. So you can have had the worst day, you can have screwed everything up that you touched, and just nothing is going right. And the horses are always happy to see you, especially if you bring food. So having friends and family and the horses, and especially Activate, it means that I can try lots of things that make me uncomfortable. I can fail epically. I can make stupid decisions. I can do everything wrong. But I still have a support network that says, well, as long as you learn something, you don't do the same thing again, we're good, keep going. And that has allowed me to try a lot of things that I might not have considered otherwise. And we keep coming back and saying the Activate community is essential. And I think it really is, especially in this, because we're not competing with each other. Once we all get in, the community is amazing in its support and helpfulness. We're all in this together. We all have impossible problems to solve. We all screw up in very interesting ways. But the happy hours and everything else are a good time to come back to the community and go, well, guess what I did today? And sharing stories and stuff. You're not alone. And I think that makes this journey not easier, but much more comfortable, and easy, and in some ways easier, by not being by yourself and isolated on an island, because that is something that I think a lot of us are prone to doing, is ending up in our own space and isolating. And that's not as healthy. It's not as productive.
I love all of your answers. They were so great, which leads me to another thing, which leads me to I guess our last question, we're going to be wrapping it up so we can leave some time open. We already have a few questions in the FAQ. We are going to get to those in just a moment, but I have last two questions, and I really just kind of to round us out and kind of bring it all to focus. So my first question is, what does work-life balance mean to you, and how do you try to navigate it and balance it?
I think that's been a difficult one for me. I think when you really care about something and you always feel like everything needs to get done right now, because if it doesn't, the company stops running and your people don't get paid and your whatever else, it does add a lot of pressure. So I have to try to be a lot more intentional about setting specific boundaries, and sometimes having accountability partners in that can be useful. But yeah, I think I haven't figured out the exact solution yet, but I think it's just bringing awareness that, like, when I'm my best self and I'm operating as good as I can operate, then the company benefits. So I need to take care of myself to make sure that, I can bring my best self as much as I can.
For me, I've been told often I have too many hobbies, too many interests, and not enough focus. And my response is usually you lack imagination, if that is your thought, which is not always the best answer. But for me, I burned out in undergrad, so I know what that feels like. It's not productive, it's not healthy, it's not happy. So I strive very hard to make sure that I have a work-life balance. Depending on who you are, I may have more life than work balance at the moment, but it shifts as needed. I have a 7.5-year-old daughter. I have 4 horses and a zoo at home, and I have a lab in my garage. And I think this is the happiest I have been in a long time. But pretty much, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. If it is just a grind, you're not going to be at your best. You're not going to be at your most productive. How you balance that with making sure that everybody gets paid, you have enough funding, and you're productive and all of that, that's hard. But it's a continual balance. But from what I have learned so far, burnout doesn't help anybody. So I think making sure that we maintain that balance, and where that balance is depends on the person, and it depends on what the point you're in your life and your company. But I think it's something that we all need to be aware of. And I think that's one thing that Activate could help a little bit more with. They try, but I think that that's something that we need to make sure is included in programming going forward, is this recognition that more hours in lab does not necessarily mean you're more productive if they're not useful hours. And I think culturally that is also something that is ingrained in us and is not necessarily healthy. So how to fix that, we'll see.
One thing I would like to add is, I think for your work, you need to make sure you really enjoy what you're working on. Otherwise, you might as well just enjoy your life and forget about your work. I remember at one time I was thinking about a major pivot in my market, and my Activate mentor, Randy, at that time was asking me this important question that I almost didn't think about, which is, are you excited about this new direction? Like, personally, forget about like the revenue, the market potential. Are you excited about this direction? And I feel like that was the moment I realized, oh, I really need to make sure whatever I work on is aligned with my personal interest. So when you enjoy what you're working on, I feel like you will get a better balance, or at least even if you're out of balance, you're still happy.
That is very true. I love all of those answers. Different perspectives, but all good advice to take. The last question I have for you is more thinking about and looking towards the future, but what impact do you wish to have on your community, whether that be your specific technology, the community that you work in, or just a broader community? What impact do you wish to have and why?
That's a tough one. I have a desire to prove that carbon nanotubes are useful on an industrial scale, but that is more a stubborn, independent determination to I told you so. But as a community, I want to see Activate grow. And somewhat selfishly, with having a daughter, I want to make sure that we continue encouraging women in science and traditionally underrepresented groups. I think the more different perspectives we get, the better we are. So enabling people to figure out, what do they want to do? I have a variety of conversations with people who are not necessarily in the hardcore sciences and explaining what is grad school? Why do we want to do it? And so I like taking hardcore science discussions out and having philosophical debates with history majors, artisans and crafts people that I run into in my different hobbies and stuff. So I think encouraging everybody to appreciate science, but also all the other fields that are out there, to just broaden horizons. If I can enable people to figure out what their passion is and a way to do it, I think that is something that makes me very happy. And hopefully I'll continue to do that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, this is a difficult question. I think as far as impact goes, from a personal perspective, I just want to make people's lives a little bit better. I know, like, the human experience can be a difficult one. And so I want to bring positivity and opportunity and, sort of joyful curiosity to the world. But I also want to be doing work, and I would like our company to be doing work that has a wider positive impact on the environment around us and how we, interact with that environment. So, my hope is we can sort of transform the way that people think about the plants that we interact with every day, and think of ways to work with nature and sort of explore new paradigms of what that could look like for the future. So
I love those answers. And I think a lot of us at Activate just have just that inner want and need to just make an impact, whether it be on the environment, on people in general, or just the community, just wanting to just use our passion for good and our science for good. And so I love that you all both have the personal but kind of professional goals with that as well. With that being said, we have a bunch of questions from our attendees. So I want to jump in and get a couple of these answered in person. It seems that we have a couple of them that have been answered. So I will take the ones that are unanswered. The first one that I'll get is from an anonymous attendee, but they asked, what are the top 3 tips for a successful application?
Kerrigan, I almost feel like that's a better question for you than it is for us.
Oh, well, okay. Could be. You're right. But from your experience, if you can remember, because for Car, I know that was a considerable amount of years ago, but for you all, it was just a couple of years ago. Do you have any advice that someone else gave you? Because I know some of you mentioned, kind of word of mouth or talking to previous Activate fellows. Do you find that helped you on the application, or what was one thing that you didn't expect or that you stumbled on or were kind of unsure about in the application that you can remember?
I think in my experience, making sure to connect to highlight the technical innovation that you have created and connect that in the best way that you can to a meaningful market application. So even if you're not 100% confident of where that's going to go today, just illustrating that this is a technology that does translate to a real world, business case, I think is important. And then I guess in the portion of the interviews where we're preparing the presentation, and we had a couple of 1 or 2 practice sessions, maybe with some Activate staff, where they provided feedback on what they wanted to see in the presentation. I would really like take that to heart and really consider, you know, making changes to your presentation, because they know what they're looking for in terms of the story that they want you to tell in that brief presentation. So make sure to kind of really listen to that feedback and incorporate it. That would be I guess those are 2 suggestions, but those would be my 2.
Good suggestions nonetheless. Good suggestions.
So I ended up in a unique situation that has actually been a lot of fun, of being both an Activate fellow, and now that I'm an alumni, I've been on the selection committee. So I was actually on the selection committee for the Boston cohort last year. And that was very interesting being on the other side. And I think my tips would be, make sure that you explain your technology in such a way that I don't have to be an expert to understand it. I don't need it to be dumbed down, but I also would rather not have to sit there and Google all of the jargon. That makes it very difficult to read. And don't worry about it being perfect. You don't have to have the best market fit. You have to have a plausible market fit, and you have to give me enough information that I can use my imagination to see, you know, maybe there's something else that this might work in. So I wouldn't let perfection be the enemy of completion or good. It's a lot of fun being on the selection committee, getting to read all of these applications and seeing everybody's fantastic ideas. And then I think the hardest part is I don't get to take them all. I don't get to take all the ones that I like. We don't have that many slots. So make sure that your idea is very clear. It is something that's interesting to you, because you're going to be doing it for a while. And other than that, yeah, I don't think that there is not a magic formula for how to get into Activate. We really do try to look at a wide range of factors. But the more clear the presentation is, the more clear the technology is and why it's cool, the easier it is then for us to move forward.
Thank you for that. I mean, where else can you get, you know, advice from a selection committee member than the Women Founder Forum? I love that. I love that. Yajing, do you have anything to add before we jump to the next question?
Yeah, I was just wanting to add one more point, which is I think Activate really wants to see that this 2 year of fellowship will be crucial for your company and your personal development. So sometimes if you're too ready, like you can already raise a bunch of VC money, this may not be a great fit for you. So making sure that you understand if this is a great fit for you, and show that you can make use of this 2 year to make a real milestone before you're ready for next round of funding.
And I think I'll just add one more thing to that. We do have a cap, a $2 million cap on the non-dilutive funding, but within that, I will also say that thinking about whether your technology can be a fit, but whether you are also a fit for the Activate Fellowship. We are a fellows first organization, so we do put a lot of emphasis, a lot of our efforts into transforming the person as well as the technology. And I know that we get that question a lot. You know, people are trying to figure out their eligibility or their tech fit, but they really don't think about how can I be transformed? How can Activate help me as a person grow into a science entrepreneur or just a business professional in general? Because we do give that business acumen training, you know, professional experience on the back end. So I think, you know, determining whether you're a good fit for the Activate Fellowship and how the fellowship can help you as a person grow is also important to mention in the application for sure. I do have another question. I have to ask because this is a women's forum, and I'm so curious as I've had it happen to me with my technology. But how do you each handle men that try to mansplain you at a conference or a meeting? And what techniques are useful to deflect?
I will share some of my stuff, though I'm not entirely sure that my answer is always the best. I tend toward somewhat sarcastic and flippant, depending on how condescending the comments are. I think the biggest thing is be confident in yourself and your technology. If you understand it and are comfortable with it, then it's easier to either just ignore when you are talked down to, or somebody decides to explain what you already know. And you're also able to deflect it and say, interesting, what do you think of these particular finer points? And I tend to get myself in trouble because I will sometimes pick points that I know they know nothing about, and sometimes get in a battle of wits, but sometimes that's cathartic. Hopefully Ashley has some other suggestions. She's got a big smile, but for me, I just typically don't take it to heart. My support network is sufficient that I don't have to prove to anybody. It's a wide world. You're going to have doubters. If this were easy, I don't think any of us would be doing it because it would be boring. So take it and say, walk away, just find somebody who's more supportive is probably much more productive than sarcasm, which is my go-to. But there are many people who will support. So
yeah, I definitely, I probably don't have the boldness to do what Kara would do, but I think it's definitely true. Like you're going to interact with people who don't fully understand what you're doing or think they know better about what you're doing. But in the end, you're going to meet and talk to so many people that, are excited about your technology or are excited about you. And like, ultimately you have control over who you maintain relationships with. And so I just try to filter out people who don't bring anything positive to or useful to the discussion. And so, yeah, like we've met, we move on, we never meet again, sort of situation. So I just, stick with the people who are willing to be constructive and have those productive conversations with you and respect you as an individual. And those are the people that can come along for the ride.
I love it. I absolutely love that. With that being said, we do have a couple more questions in the Q&A, but they are more general. So I will end us here. Thank you, both Ashley, Yajing, and Kara, for your perspective, your discussion, your thought, your consideration, and care with answering these questions for our attendees. If you have any additional questions, I will probably take these Q&A and send a couple of follow-ups to those who had more general questions because we didn't get a chance to answer them. But if you have any more questions, additional questions, want to connect with us further, you're more than welcome to email us at apply@activate.org. Just to plug that our application for the Activate Fellowship do open in a couple of weeks. The application timeline is going to be from September the 19th to October the 17th. You can learn more at www.activate.org/apply. But again, if you have any questions about your technology, your fit, questions about this panel in general, you're more than welcome to email us at apply@activate.org. With that being said, thank you guys for joining. We hope that you enjoyed this conversation and discussion, and we will see you next time.